Arab League calls for pressure on Israel to end Gaza massacre. Violent tornadoes rip across U.S. Midwest and Great Lakes. Hello and good afternoon. Salam Malaysia Madani. Thanks for joining us. I'm Otto Othman and you're watching World Today. Arab leaders meeting Saturday at a summit in Baghdad urged the international community to press for a Gaza ceasefire as Israel launched an expanded military offensive in the Palestinian territory. In a joint final statement, Arab League members also called for funding to back their Gaza reconstruction plan after U.S. President Donald Trump reiterated a proposal to take over the Strip. The Arab leaders also said that they firmly rejected any plans to displace Palestinians. Appearing at the summit as a guest, United Nations Chief Antonio Guterres also told the summit that the world need a permanent ceasefire now.
I am alarmed by reported plans by Israel to expand ground operations and more. And I emphasize that the United Nations will not participate in any so-called aid operation that does not adhere to international law and humanitarian principles of humanity, impartiality, independence and neutrality. And I reiterate my appeal for the urgent and full support of UNRWA's work, including financial support.
Guterres also urged an end to Israel's aid blockade on Gaza. Israeli strikes since Thursday have seen one of the deadliest phases of bombardment since a truce collapsed in March and came as U.S. President Donald Trump ended his West Asia tour on Friday with no apparent progress towards a ceasefire. Meanwhile, Israel launched an intensified offensive in Gaza on Saturday, with rescuers in the Palestinian territory reporting at least 32 killed by new Israeli strikes. Now, this stepped-up campaign came amid growing international concern over worsening humanitarian conditions in Gaza as an Israeli aid blockade wore on and as a new round of indirect negotiations between Hamas and Israel got underway in Doha. Israel's military said the operation marked the expansion of the battle in the Gaza Strip with the goal of achieving all its war's objectives. Gaza's civil defense agency said more than half of those killed were women and children. Spokesman Mahmoud Basal said some of people were still buried under the rubble after the strikes, and that there were also reports of deaths and injuries elsewhere, but rescuers were unable to reach the areas due to ongoing shelling. In Deir al-Balah, displaced Gazans sifted through belongings, some stained with blood, for whatever could be salvaged after overnight strikes hit their tents. Italy urged Israel to stop the strikes, while Germany said it was deeply concerned. European Council President Antonio Costa said that he was shocked by the news from Gaza. U.S. President Donald Trump will speak with Russian President Vladimir Putin on Monday to discuss stopping the war in Ukraine, days after the first direct talks between Russia and Ukraine in more than 3 years. Now, Trump had offered to travel to Turkey for the talks while in the Gulf last week if Putin would also attend, but Putin declined to take him up on the offer. The president has been pressuring Putin and Ukraine President Volodymyr Zelensky to agree to a ceasefire in the 3-year-old war. Trump said in a Truth Social post that his call with Putin will be on Monday at 10 a.m. The subject of the call will be stopping the bloodbath that is killing on average more than 5,000 Russian and Ukrainian soldiers a week and trade. Trump said he would also speak to Zelensky and various members of NATO afterwards. Meanwhile, the European Union would further increase pressure on Russia and introduce new sanctions as its meeting next week after the Ukraine-Russia talks earlier fell short of its expectations.
Die gestrigen Gespräche in Istanbul sind hinter unseren Erwartungen zurückgeblieben, trotz einer maximal konstruktiven Haltung der ukrainischen Verhandlungsführung. Immerhin, die Delegationen konnten einen Gefangenenaustausch verabreden, aber Russland hat sich der Forderung nach einem umfassenden und bedingungslosen Waffenstillstand bisher verweigert. Präsident Putin selbst war nicht bereit, in die Türkei zu kommen. Seine Truppen setzen auch heute die Angriffe mit unverminderter Härte fort.
Burns, speaking alongside Italian Prime Minister Giorgia Meloni in Rome, said the bloc would introduce the 17th sanctions package, targeting, among other things, the so-called shadow fleet in the Baltic Sea. Western sanctions imposed on Russia for invading Ukraine and aimed at cutting its oil revenues have led to the rise of a vast shadow fleet of unregulated tankers, helping Moscow keep its crude exports flowing. Meantime, Burns said Europe is a long way from talking about deploying troops in Ukraine, as all its efforts are currently focused on securing an unconditional ceasefire from Russia. At least 21 people were killed overnight in Kentucky and Missouri when a volatile weather system spawned tornadoes as it ripped across a large swath of the U.S. Midwest and Great Lakes. Now, in Kentucky, at least 14 people were killed and the death toll was expected to rise. Earlier, a tornado ripped through St. Louis, killing at least 5 people, injuring 38 and damaging 5,000 properties as it tore off roofs. It also knocked down power lines and swept through a major thoroughfare during rush hour traffic. The National Weather Service said thunderstorms were widespread across portions of the Mississippi, Tennessee, and Ohio valleys. At least half a dozen tornadoes touched down in Missouri and neighboring Illinois, and other severe weather stretched all the way to the Atlantic coast, including another tornado reported in New Jersey. About 155,000 customers were without power in Kentucky and Missouri, which tracks blackouts across the country. A Mexican Navy sailing ship crashed into the Brooklyn Bridge on Saturday night, shearing the top of its masts and causing multiple injuries. Now, according to multiple U.S. media reports, around 200 people were on board the Cuauhtemoc barquey built in 1982 with a mast height of 48.2 meters at the time. The Navy said in a statement at least 22 people were wounded, 3 of them critically, adding no personnel fell into the water. Video online showed the ship sailing underneath the bridge connecting the New York City boroughs of Brooklyn and also Manhattan as its masts collided with it. Many people dressed in what appeared to be white sailor uniforms could be seen dangling from the ship's crossbeams. At a base of the bridge, which is located near New York City South Street Seaport, bystanders could be seen running away from the approaching ship. The suspension bridge, a popular tourist attraction and a main conduit between Manhattan and Brooklyn, was completed in 1883. Coming up, China and EU suspend Brazil chicken imports over bird flu. The Philippines Department of Health is actively monitoring COVID-19 infections in Southeast Asia amid a reported rise in cases in parts of the region. As of May 3rd, 2025, the department reported an 87% decrease in cases and fatalities compared to 2024 in the Philippines, with only 1,774 COVID-19 cases reported this year. The case fatality rate is only 1.13%. The department said it is committed to keeping the public informed and will provide timely updates should the situation evolve. China and the European Union have suspended imports of chicken meat from Brazil, the world's biggest exporter of the commodity, after an outbreak of bird flu on a farm in the South American country. According to Brazil's ABPA Meat Association, China is main importer of the Brazilian chicken with 562,000 tons in 2024. The EU, for its part, imported more than 231,000 tons of chicken last year, totaling 4.5% of Brazil's exports of the meat. While China and the EU suspended imports from Brazil as a whole, other countries may place restrictions on the affected region only. Brazil's Agriculture Ministry said an outbreak of a new strain of highly pathogenic avian influenza has been confirmed on a farm in Montenegro in southern state of Rio Grande do Sul. It said the virus could not be transmitted to humans by the consumption of the poultry meat or eggs. Now, according to World Health Organization, human cases detected so far early or mostly linked to people who had close contact with infected birds and other animals or contaminated environments. The virus does not appear to move easily from person to person. Brazil says contaminant and eradication measures have been put in place. Now, thousands of residents evacuated on Saturday as rains lashed the north of Argentina's Buenos Aires province, a vital agricultural hub, and caused severe flooding. The National Meteorological Service, which issued a red alert for the region on Friday evening, reported rainfall between 150 and 250 millimeters between the cities of Zárate and Arrecifes. It warned that storms were constantly regenerating, with more rain expected. Buenos Aires Province Governor Axel Kicillof warned of further hardship due to persisting rain and an unexpected cold front, and he advised against any travel. Television images showed residents in Zárate, 100 kilometers from the capital, navigating submerged streets in boats loaded with belongings. A long-distance bus with 44 passengers was reported trapped by floodwaters on Route 9 near Zárate. In San Antonio de Reco, more than 260 millimeters fell in 24 hours, an amount local Mayor Francisco Rato called rarely surpassed. The heavy precipitation in the key flood-exporting region is anticipated to cause further delays to the ongoing soybean harvest. Argentina is the top global exporter of soybean, meal and oil, as well as the third largest exporter of corn and a major wheat exporter. Mexican security forces detained 9 alleged members of a criminal group and killed 12 others in an operation in a rural part of southwestern Mexico. 3 members of the Navy were injured in the Navy-led operation in Huitzotla, Michoacán. The Security Ministry said the detained individuals are linked to crimes such as homicide, extortion, and kidnapping. It said criminal groups in the area are tied to maritime drug trafficking, adding naval personnel who found weapons and tactical equipment at the site. Local media reported that the group was part of a cartel, Jalisco New Generation Gang, one of Mexico's 2 major drug cartels, and which the U.S. government designated a terrorist organization in February. A bomb exploded near a reproductive health facility in Palm Springs, California, resulting in the death of 1 person. ABC News, citing law enforcement sources and the facility, said at least 5 people were injured in the explosion. The Federal Bureau of Investigation in Los Angeles is investigating the explosion with bomb technicians deployed to the scene. Palm Springs is about 161 kilometers east of Los Angeles. Seven of the 10 inmates involved in this daring escape from a New Orleans jail remain at large. The 10 inmates, including some charged with murder, escaped from the Orleans Parish Justice Center around 1 a.m. Friday. The Orleans Parish Justice Center, which mostly holds people awaiting trial or sentencing, discovered the inmates aged 19 and 42 were gone during a routine head count on Friday morning. Security video captured the men fleeing via a loading dock, scaling a wall and running across a nearby highway. Spanish police cordoned off part of a road in Gran Canaria's airport in the island's capital, Telde, following what they said was an attempted stabbing during a violent robbery. Photographers and officers in forensics suits worked in the cordoned off road and pavement in the airport. Police officers also searched a car. In a statement on Saturday, Spanish police said they shot dead a person who had used a knife against a taxi driver in an attempted robbery. Investigations were continuing. Coming up in sports, Crystal Palace stunned Man City to seal historic FA Cup title. Malaysia's national men's doubles pair and reigning Asian men's doubles champions Aaron Chia Sowoo-yik are on track for their second title of the year after advancing to the Thailand Open final yesterday. Now, the second seeds needed just 38 minutes to overcome home favourites and fifth seeds Kitimnupong Kedren Dechapol Puvaronokro of Thailand 21-17, 21-13 in the semi-final. Now, this marks the Malaysian pair's second Thailand Open final, having finished as runners-up in 2020. Now, despite the strong support from Kitimnupong Dechapol from the home crowd, Aaron Woyik controlled the first game, winning 21-17 and sealed the match in straight sets with a commanding 21-13 victory. Aaron noted that their game plan and court control had improved since the first round of the tournament, during which they had played a late match past midnight. He also expressed hope that they would maintain their positive momentum in the final. In the final, Aaron Woyik will face Denmark's world number 75 duo William Kirgonbo, Christian Frostreyer. And the last Malaysian men's doubles pair to win the Thailand Open title were Chan Peng Soon, Lim Kim Wah in 2009. Meanwhile, top Malaysian women's doubles pair Pearly Tan and Tina also stormed to a 21-18, 21-12 semi-final win over Japan's Rui Hirokami Sayaka Hobara at the Mini Butr Stadium. Now, the world number 4 Malaysians took just 45 minutes to subdue the Japanese pair and set up a title showdown against South Korea's Jong Na-eun Lee Yeon-woo, who had disposed of Taiwan's Shu Ya-ching Su Yu-shuen 21-17, 21-19 in the other semi-final. Tina admitted that they got off to a slightly nervy start as their opponent's game plan caught them off guard. Pearly, meanwhile, said that after resolving the initial hiccup, their discussion to pressure their opponents proved effective. In January, Pearly Tina came close to winning their first world title before going down 12-21, 21-17, 18-21 to South Korea's Kim Hee-jeong Kong Hee-yong in the final of the 2025 Indonesian Masters. Crystal Palace won their first ever major trophy with a surprise 1-0 win over Manchester City in the FA Cup final early this morning, thanks to Eberechi Eze's first half goal and Dean Henderson's penalty save. Now, Eze scored from Palace's very first attack in the 16th minute with a superb finish from Daniel Budon's cross after Jean-Philippe Mateta's brilliant hold-up play started the move. Now, City had a golden chance to equalize in the 36th minute when Tyrick Mitchell brought down Bernardo Silva, but former Manchester United goalie Henderson, who earlier survived a war check for a possible red card, saved Omar Marmushi's effort. Now, the 7-time winners went close after the break, though Daichi Kamada and Munoz produced vital blocks and Henderson saved substitute Claudio Echeverri's deflected shot as Palace defended valiantly to secure their side's greatest victory. Now, City's loss in the Cup final for a second successive season summed up a harrowing campaign in which they have been dethroned as the powerhouse of English football and are without a domestic trophy for the first time since 2016-17. In tennis, home favorite and 6th seed Jasmine Paolini saw off American world number 3 Coco Gauff 6-4, 6-2 in the Italian Open final in Rome. Now, it was Paolini's biggest clay court title and her second 1,000 level crown, ahead of Roland Garros later this month. Later, Bloomer Paolini, who also won in Dubai last year, is the first Italian woman to win the Rome event since Raffaella Reggi in 1985, after overcoming former U.S. champion Gauff in straight sets. Gauff made 55 unforced errors to go with 7 double faults on serve, making Paolini's life unnecessarily easy. Now, Gauff was visibly livid with her performance, which started with a double fault and continued with sloppy shots throughout the match. Now, Gauff lost 5 of her 9 serve games and ended a poor evening's work with a failed serve return attempt, which handed Paolini possibly the biggest win of her career. Up next, Moomin characters celebrate 80th anniversary in Brussels. Drums pounded and colorful figures whirled through crowds as Nigeria hosted a 2-day masquerade festival this week, drawing participants from across West Africa in a vibrant celebration of endangered cultural traditions. This spectacle featured elaborately costumed masquerades performing traditional dances, highlighting cultural practices increasingly threatened by religious influences in Africa's most populous nation. Festival goers created a kaleidoscope of color, with attendees sporting distinctive asoebi attire representing different southwestern Nigerian states and neighboring countries. Masquerades, deeply embedded in Nigerian cultural identity, traditionally commemorate significant events and honor ancestors through symbolic masks and performances representing themes like fertility and wisdom. Cultural researcher Fadunsi Abe highlighted the masquerade tradition's uncredited influence on contemporary fashion. Now, it is second year. Organizers plan to make the festival an annual event, preserving West Africa's unique cultural heritage. Stuffed Moomin characters paraded through the streets of Brussels' European quarters to celebrate their 80th anniversary. The event marked a milestone for the beloved Moomin series, originally created by Finnish illustrator and writer Tove Jansson, which has garnered a significant fan base around the world. Since the publication of the Moomins and the Great Flood in 1945, the adventures of Moomin Troll and his parents, Moomin Mama and Moomin Papa, have been featured in 13 novels and picture books, translated into 40 languages, along with thousands of cartoon strips.
And everyone here is celebrating the Moomins. And the first Moomin book was released 80 years ago. So this is 80th-year anniversary for Moomins. And I think the Moomin core values like love, equality, courage, inclusiveness, they are just as important today as they were 80 years ago.
Inhabiting a land called Moomin Valley, these characters offer comfort akin to British author Winnie the Pooh, created in 1920s, yet delve into darker mysteries. Jansson, who passed away in 2001, drew from her own experiences, including the impact of war, to create stories that resonate deeply with audiences in Europe and Japan. More than 3,000 Bolivians gathered in La Paz to play Andean music known as tarqueda in an attempt to break a world record, authorities said. Tarquedas are traditional Bolivian musical gatherings where people play an Andean flute called the tarca. The instrument and music are especially associated with Aymara culture, one of the indigenous cultures in Bolivia. Attendant Melanie Colony Corolla said she was proud to be able to play tarca, an instrument previously played mainly by men.
El instrumento de la tarca es algo muy fundamental para lo que es la cultura andina. Nosotros como mujeres, más que todo, somos muy privilegiadas en esta época de tocarlos. Hace años solo se tocaba lo que es la tarca o los instrumentos de vientos, los varones. Ahora podemos tocarlo en esta generación nueva y la tarca significa un tiempo de lluvia, de Jayupache, y justo está lloviendo. Es tiempo de siembra, tiempo de lluvia.
Bolivia Minister of Cultures Esperanza Guevara said during the event, organizers hope to break a world record for the largest tarqueda. Twin tiger cubs, Rasmi and Mandala, could be seen exploring their enclosure at the Frankfurt Zoo recently, and this was the first time the Sumatran tiger babies could be viewed by the public since they were born. According to director of the Frankfurt Zoo, Christina Giger, the tiger family is doing very well. The parents are attentive and the cubs lively and curious, that is, when they aren't asleep.
Die beiden Tigerjungtiere heißen Rasmi und Mandala und was sie den ganzen Tag machen, weiß ich auch noch nicht so genau. Wir haben uns ja selbst sehr zurückgehalten bisher. Aber die Tierpfleger haben natürlich immer mal wieder was gesehen und ja, Fressen und Spielen ist ein Teil, womit sie sich beschäftigen, aber viel Zeit verwenden sie im Moment einfach noch für Schlafen. Schlafen, schlafen, schlafen. Ich habe sie fast immer nur schlafen sehen.
The cubs are expected to stay with their parents for about a year, and zoo-goers will be able to observe them as they keep climbing and playing in the enclosure, as well as occasionally hiss at a curious visitor. The Sumatran tiger is a critically endangered species, and great efforts are needed to preserve these animals in their natural habitat. Now that concludes today's edition of World Today. In our top story, Arab League calls for pressure on Israel to end Gaza massacre. Until then, I'm Otto Othman. From the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. Thanks for watching. Have a pleasant day ahead.